Cameron.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairpersonship, Mr Rossendale, and I'd like to thank the EFRA committee and the Honourable Member for Tiverton and Honington for leading the debate today. I'd also like to start by thanking the great many organisations who work for greyhound welfare across the UK, including Scotland's Greyhound Rescue, the League Against Cruel Sports, Blue Cross, RSPCA, SSPCA, Scottish Greyhound Sanctuary, Give a Greyhound a Home, Dogs Trust, IFAW, and West of Scotland Greyhound Welfare, who look after greyhounds in foster homes and kennels across my own area. Greyhounds are, I believe, raced until they are 3 to 4 years old. Then many will be put down. Greyhounds are described as being very, very clever. They're generally very gentle, and they're fantastic with children. 2 20-minute walks per day is all they need, as they are built for speed, not stamina. So they should be rehomed, not disposed of. My first contact with greyhound racing was extremely distressing, and it has never left me. I was working as a psychologist in the NHS, and my colleague was married to a local vet. He was just starting in his career, and he was doing evening sessions at the Greyhound track at Shawfield Stadium in Glasgow. This, I believe, is a regulated stadium. And I understand that unregulated stadiums, veterinary cover may not be in place at all. My colleague routinely came into work upset in the morning, stating there was another dead dog in a bag in her garage the morning before she left for work. She described the terrible circumstances her husband worked in the evening, whereby he was placed in a double bind. He either put dogs down, those who were injured or those who were judged not to be good enough, or he said they would be killed in inhumane ways, hit over the head with bricks, their bodies discarded in the countryside, their ears cut off to prevent detection, left on motorways, left in mass graves elsewhere. The dogs were simply treated as commodities by individuals whose sole goal was to make money at their expense. So he often had to euthanise dogs who could have been treated medically or recovered, or who would simply have met, in his words, a much worse fate. As a young vet, it must have truly depressed him, and it still upsets me to this day to think of it. The second time I came into contact with greyhound welfare issues was slightly different. It was working in forensic mental health services. I often had to risk assess very violent offenders and provide recommendations for their management. I had an offender to assess who had been extremely violent towards his partner and children. He owned 2 greyhounds, and assessment revealed that he went hare coursing illegally with the dogs. As with many violent individuals, he had a history of violence towards animals involving his dogs. They were regularly kicked and beaten by a man 6 feet tall, who used them to kill hares in the middle of the night, his favourite pastime, alongside violence towards humans. Since this time, many of my colleagues and friends have rehomed greyhounds. They speak of unspeakable lives for greyhounds today, in the industry and out with those who engage in illegal hare coursing too. Few prosecutions occur, so things haven't gotten better, and it makes me sick to my stomach to think of the suffering and distressing lives that thousands of greyhounds have today. So I'd like to see change from the Minister. Radical reform of this industry is needed. There should be one system of regulation covering all tracks. Local authority officers, I believe, are not resourced properly enough to be trained adequately to assess the tracks, and they're not required to inspect them on a regular basis. So this needs to be addressed. We need, as we've heard, to address data regarding the number of dogs euthanised unnecessarily, the accidents and injuries that occur at trackside, and the data regarding retiring greyhounds. Thousands of dogs, as we have heard, are unaccounted for each year, and that's simply not good enough. There needs to be regular inspection of breeders and training kennels, not just tracks, because we need to ensure that the welfare of the dogs is kept where they spend most of their lives. The problem of doping, as has been raised, needs to be addressed. Dogs are drugged in order to speed up or slow down their progress. This further undermines the integrity of greyhound racing, and it has serious effects on dog welfare. Mandatory testing is required at tracks, and punishment for those found to be using drugs, fines, bans, imprisonment or rehabilitation, or many of the above. We need to increase the number of dogs tested. Ultimately, I do not wish to see self-regulation continue in this industry, as I feel it just prolongs the time to change. I have little faith in the industry to regulate independently or to reform. The UK is, I believe, already behind many international standards, and repeated attempts at reform have failed, so we need UK government action now. I would suggest a moratorium on new tracks opening, greyhound passports or tracking. We need, as agreed, that bookmakers take responsibility and contribute to standard improvement. The public, quite simply, will not stand for inaction in this realm. We must address the scourge of greyhound cruelty that permeates the UK today. Thank you.